In this video, I will explain the difference between change in quantity supplied and change in supply in economics. So let's jump right in. When we refer to a change in quantity supplied, that's referring to a movement along the existing supply curve. And this movement is caused solely by a change in price. So to illustrate this, let's consider some supply curve, let's say for apples. On the y-axis, we have the price, and on the x-axis, we have the quantity. Let's say that currently apples are selling for $5 each. So the equilibrium price is $5. And let's say at that price level, the quantity is 100 apples. Now imagine the scenario where for one reason or another, the price of apples increases to $6. So all the way up here. Notice what happens to the quantity supplied. We're moving up the existing supply curve. And let's say at this new price of $6, the quantity supplied, let's say that jumps to 120. So when the price increases, producers are willing to supply a greater quantity because they're interested in selling apples at a higher price point. So the quantity supplied goes up. So notice that the existing supply curve, it hasn't changed. We've simply moved from one point on the supply curve up to a new point. Now consider the scenario where, for one reason or another, the price of apples drops to, let's say, $4. Then notice what happens to the quantity supplied. We have now moved down the supply curve. And let's say at this price level of $4, producers are only willing to supply, let's say, 80 apples. So there's less interest in supplying this good because the price of the good has gone down. So again, in this case, the supply curve has stayed the same. We've simply moved from one point to a new point on the same existing supply curve. And again, these movements are caused solely by a change in price. So when the price goes up or down, the quantity supplied by producers goes up or down. Now let's consider a change in supply. This represents a shift of the entire supply curve. And this shift is caused by a factor other than price, such as better technology increasing agricultural yield, or perhaps a drought causing less agricultural yield. So again, let's consider the scenario where we have a supply curve for apples. Now imagine the scenario where better technology comes out that enables producers to increase their agricultural yield or increase the number of apples they're actually able to produce. In this case, the entire supply curve will shift to the right. So in other words, there is greater supply at every previous price level. So literally the entire supply curve has shifted to the right. So what this means is that there is more supply of apples at every previous price level. So for example, remember we said that at a $5 price level, producers were interested in supplying a quantity of 100 apples. But notice when the supply curve shifts to the right, at this same $5 price level, right here on our new supply curve, the new quantity supplied is, let's say this is like 150 all the way out here. So we're at the same price level, but the quantity supplied has increased. And again, that's because better technology in this case has allowed us to increase the number of apples that could be supplied. But now consider a scenario where there is a drought. So there's a lack of rain or a lack of water resources. And let's say that causes a lower agricultural yield. So there are fewer apples that are being produced. What this does is it shifts the entire supply curve to the left. So this would be our new supply curve. And what that means is because of this drought, there are literally fewer apples to be sold on the marketplace. And remember previously at a $5 price level, producers were willing to supply a quantity of 100 apples. But now when we shift the supply curve at this same $5 price level, producers are only able to supply, let's say, 60 apples. So at every price level, the quantity supplied has gone down. And again, that's because this drought has caused a decrease in agricultural yield. So the entire supply curve has shifted to the left. So that's the difference between these two terms. A change in quantity supplied is a movement along the existing supply curve, and it's caused solely by a change in price, while a change in supply is a shift of the entire supply curve, and that's caused by something other than price. So hopefully this video made the difference between these two terms clear.